So we are in the first symposium against aporophobia that is being hosted here in the region of Murcia in the University of Murcia.
Los talleres, el último panel de esta jornada, que bueno, en este caso voy a comentar un poquito.
And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the dynamic. This is a European conference, so many of the participants are taking part online from different countries. So we will have here also people in the table, and we are going to deal with political tools to fight against aporophobia. And this is a European look. Now, the public policies have been cross-sectional since we started yesterday, also this morning, and now with the panel that we have. So, one by one, I'm going to introduce all our participants or panelists. I will make an individual question and a general question for all of them, so that everyone can participate, both from here and online. More than 500 people have taken part as participants in this symposium. And also, I will ask you all to be mindful of the time, because we are close to 2 p.m. and we need to close so that people can take the train to get back home, although we wouldn't mind if you stayed here in Murcia. Let us start by saying hello, by greeting the first of our panelists. She is Susana del Rio. She's a doctor in social sciences. She's a politologist expert in European policies. And with her, we want to address a number of questions. She will be the first speaker. She needs to close because of her packed agenda. But hello, Susana, and welcome to this symposium. So, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be here. Yeah, it is a pleasure for us as well. So, just to start, we would like to know from your experience in European policies, what are the necessary steps to fight against aporophobia, measures that can be incorporated explicitly within the current European agenda and the common European frameworks within the different constitutions of the different countries. Well, yes, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Carlos Ucía, José Javier López, and of course, Marcelo Ronchi, for the organization. I have participated in other events by EAPN, and my doctoral thesis on civil participation in the European Union. I presented it already many years ago, and in that context, EAPN was always present because of their contributions in the fight against poverty. Now, regarding your question, I have to say that the European Union must look permanently to its Charter of Fundamental Rights and the Lisbon Treaty. The Fundamental Rights Charter is a fundamental work of the European Union, and it includes all the essential values that have to do with the question that you have formulated with regards to people in situation of social exclusion, but it also connects with the fight against poverty. The values of dignity, fraternity, solidarity, and humanity in the framework of citizenship, the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union elevates the dignity and permanently, but also the essential values against social exclusion. Obviously, poverty, I always say this, and I said it also last year in a conference organized by EAPN in Madrid, poverty is a great shame of the 21st century. I think today we need to look at the pending subjects of the European Union. Von der Leyen, in the speech of the State of the European Union, before our representative democracy, she exposed what are the axes of the European Union in the face of the war in Ukraine, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and she also said that the eradication of poverty is one of the fundamental axes of the political action and the legislative action of the European Union to eradicate it by 2050. We also have the European Strategy Against Poverty, which will be approved next year in 2026. And the great axes of the great challenges of European Union, such as political autonomy and everything to do with European defense. Also in the framework of the fight against poverty, we need to bear in mind the digital transformation to not leave anyone behind, also in the climate justice fight. So we need to bear in mind that we need to include solidarity in all these axes. Solidarity, as I said, is one of the main values of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. We also need to talk permanently of how the Eurobarometer has showed what are the concerns of European citizens and how the European citizens identify with the current issues, and how poverty is one of the main points of concern among citizens. The Eurobarometer shows that the 72% of the people in the European Union, 92% show that 21% is at the risk of exclusion. And poverty, as I said, is a shame of the 21st century. Now, with all the things that are taking place at geopolitical level, and with all the challenges we still face, like the triple transition of digital and climate transition, which of course has an impact in the social aspects, also everything that has to do with the Migration Pact, all these challenges that we face in the European Union, together with defense and security, must be represented in the pluriannual financial framework. And nowadays there is a huge debate regarding agriculture, regarding the PAC, which is at the origin of the project of integration. And I remark this word, integration. And as I said, there's a huge debate in connection with agriculture and the agrarian common policy. Now, the 2028-2034 pluriannual financial framework must also show a budget, an important item of that budget for this European strategy against poverty, and also to reach that goal and create a credible trend. Because as Schuman said, Europe is created through solidarity that is based on concrete steps. So these vectors, as I said, towards 2050 must start creating some very solid basis of tangible action. And now, just to conclude, I would like to say that the whole European Union must be cohesive all my studies of participation within the European Union, all the consultations that the European Union does to the citizens, and all the initiatives of the Commission in the years 2004, 2009, in the time where I had the honor of being the rapporteur at the time when I had defended my doctorate thesis in the year 2004, and also all the consultations to the citizens, everything that has to do with online consultations show the work that the European Union is doing in order to make concrete what NGOs, citizens are demanding. These are permanent tools that have been perfected and they have been institutionalized since the Beckett Declaration on the Future of Europe, where in 2001 we already said that the participation of the civil society had to be consolidated in the institutions. There has been a lot of progress. I have always studied democratic participation because I always think that our political representatives, our Euro members of the European Parliament, are the people that need to get involved also making this a reality. Now, in relation to mechanisms and pathways, I would like to say that it's always very important to make a difference how the great to say how how the great conference of the European Union on participation ended up before it had to because of the COVID. But in that year, there was a multi-level debate, and this conference on the future of Europe, in my opinion, the multilingual platform didn't work as it should have, and even, but still some proposals were made true. But the model of the European Convention, the first convention that elaborated the Charter of the Fundamental Rights, and the second convention that elaborated the project of European Constitution, although that never took place because of the rejection of France and Netherlands, is still expressed in our Treaty of Lisbon. And however, we must make a difference between the convention, between this and the Convention for the Reformation of the Treaties. We need to make a new convention. A new convention must have the legal mandate of legal binding the conventions into treaties. And a reform of the treaties cannot be made without the presence and participation of civil society and, of course, of a network that is as important as the European network of the fight against extreme poverty and social exclusion, and everything that has to do with vulnerability. All those issues must be escalated amongst the most important challenges: the geopolitical awakening, security of strategic security of Europe, migration pact, the triple transition of Europe, and also it must also take part in the pluriannual financial framework of 2028-2034. And also through the present term 2024-2029 of the European presidency. Thank you very much again. I'm very sorry not to be able to listen to my fellow panelists. I will do it at another point. But again, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for your permanent fight. Thank you for your work, for the work of the European Network of Fight Against Poverty.
Por su participación en este simposio.
Thank you very much for your participation. Again, remember that the sessions will be recorded in case you want to consult them. Therefore, you'll be able to listen to them. Thank you again and have a good day. Okay, in connection with this, there's an importance of weaving networks in Europe. And in this regard, we are going to say hello today to Juliana Wahlgren. She's the director of EAPN in Europe, and she will also, she's also online. So good afternoon, Juliana. Hello, how are you? Welcome to the region of Murcia. Hello.
Thank you for the invitation. Hello to EAPN Spain, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Voy a realizarle una pregunta también de posicionamiento que, bueno, pues para desde su perspectiva.
To know also your position.
In this European context with more inequality and gaps, as the rapporteur of the UN was mentioning yesterday, at a supranational level and also at a small level, and there are more and more hate speeches. What do you think the social policies can make, or what is the role they can play?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. It's very difficult to come with something innovative after. Wait, one second. I think there is a problem with interpretation. 1 second. Yes, to come with something innovative after 2 days of interesting meetings. I had the pleasure to watch online the discussion yesterday and the exchange, especially with the special rapporteur, Olivier de Schutter. And from our perspective, there are 2 angles to answer this question. First of all, there is the angle on how we can improve social policies, and there is the angle how we can better understand anti-discrimination frameworks. So when it comes to social policies, what we see today is that there is invisibility of the anti-discrimination aspect in social policies. There is a kind of blindness when it comes to class issues or socioeconomic issues. So there is a lot of effort at the European level that needs to be done over there. So it means that even if member states, by discretion, by their own mandate, have decided to extend the protection of social discrimination at the national and domestic legislation and policy level, at the European level, this still remains a very long battle between competencies and mandates. What should be done, first of all, as social policies, what should be done as anti-discrimination policies, and a second level, what should be the EU mandate and what should be the member state mandate. So we navigate in this very difficult ecosystem, trying to find solutions for a fragmented environment. So our point here is going to be complementary to what UN rapporteur yesterday mentioned, is to give more attention to the structural and systemic angle. Aporophobia means also that we are focusing more the level of discrimination at the individual level. It's like we are understanding how one individual discriminates the other, when the spectrum of discrimination goes beyond that, it's wider than that. And let me start with an example. The way a single man living in poverty faces social discrimination is totally different. The way that a single mother of 3 will face social discrimination is totally different on how a white single mother will face discrimination and how a Roma woman will face discrimination. So there is no one size fits all in terms of manifestation experience of discrimination. Therefore, it's very important to have an intersectional approach. You understand that we are just following up different experience to the very much unfortunate social vulnerability and socioeconomic barriers that people might face. So we come back here to the structural systemic change, where we feel that there is a moment now where a shift in the narrative, moving from a narrative of alleviation, reduction to poverty, to eradication of poverty, give us a freeway, give us an opportunity to tap into the structural and systemic issue. And just to give an example that was already shared yesterday, in terms of structural issues, in trying to improve access to rights and service, especially when it comes to the coverage and eligibility aspects, and also the question of no-pay count. So it's important that we anchor these issues of access to rights in right-based approach, not in level of charity. So it's really important that in terms of flexibility, we remove the burden of the individual and you understand how the institution, the structures are putting more barriers to the access, either by assistance, either by local support, either by legislations, either by policies. So this is very important. Another fact that is very important is to go back to the question, what do we do when aporophobia is reproduced by an institution or a public institution? What do we do? What do we do while we are asking for more protection and the recognition of socioeconomic discrimination as a protected background? At the same time, we have policies that criminalize our communities. What do we do? Shall we understand that criminalization of poverty is also aporophobia, is also socioeconomic discrimination? So there is a dilemma there, where to focus first. So, but one cannot do without the other. We cannot provide a legal framework that protects people experiencing poverty if you don't understand that many of the experience are being felt by people that are put in front of public servants, civil officials, representative of local authorities. What do we do with them? Or even the police. Yesterday, Olivier de Scutter gave an example of homelessness, on the criminalization of people sleeping on the street, the ban of begging. What do we do when there's a police that comes to enforce a legal framework or a law? So this is also a very important discussion that we need to have. And at the systemic level, it's very important, again, to be consistent and shift the narrative of the blame from individual to a political responsibility. The power of austerity, the response to austerity, putting the burden of the people, it's also putting people in situation of further exploitation, especially in the context of work. So how we can create an understanding that is not only about one person discriminating the other, is a whole ecosystem that is designed to discriminate. And that is very difficult when it comes to social policies when they are not in dialogue with anti-discrimination frameworks. And under discrimination frameworks, we have another problem, which is the invisibility of the class aspect or the socioeconomic aspect. Let me remind you that at the European level, socioeconomic discrimination is not a protective background of discrimination. Furthermore, not all communities are protected by the equal equalities that are already there. Just to give you an example, people with migrant background are not protected at EU level if they feel they've been discriminated because they are migrants. There is a loophole in the EU legislation when it comes to that. So it's impossible to tackle aporophobia if you do not extend the level of protection to all the communities. But when it comes to the anti-discrimination framework, there are solutions and there are opportunities in the moment. One of the biggest opportunity is the Horizontal Equal Treatment Directive that was put on hold for 17 years since 2008 and was reopened by the European Commission now in July 2025. But it's not the Horizontal Directive. The Horizontal Directive tries to align all equal treatment directives on gender, on race, on LGBTI, on disability, on religion, on sexual orientation, gender expression at the same level, as we would not have a hierarchy of rights. So they try to see and go beyond the protection of employment on how the EU could give a fully fledged protection for all people from all groups in society.
Juliana, un segundito, necesitamos que hables un poquito más despacio.
Yeah, I need
Porque es un...
a little bit slower because, your intervention is being translated. And please speak a little bit slower so that the interpreter can work. Thank you.
My apologies for that. So coming back to the Horizontal Directive, it was reopened now in July 2025 after 7 years in backlog. Which are the opportunities for us there? First of all, to add socioeconomic background and a protective characteristic of discrimination, because it's absent for the current proposal. Also to add structural and systemic discrimination in the scope of this horizontal directive that will then align all the equal treatment directives that exist and also have a sophisticated understanding of what is direct and indirect discrimination. It would be a really good opportunity to start talking and create a connection between social and anti-discrimination policies in one tool. Another solution would be to work on data collection, but to try to better understand beyond the individual level, to understand discrimination in terms of structural and systemic level. And therefore, with this mandate, especially if socioeconomic characteristics are recognized by a directive or by the treaty, we could ask for further research with the Fundamental Rights Agency, which already have started to collect data on socioeconomic discrimination, especially on housing, for migrants, Muslims, people with disability and LGBTI communities. They are already working on that, but the information and the results, they are not transferred to social policies. Another thing to work that could be interesting is to give also input in the current EU consultations for the upcoming strategies. So we have the anti-poverty strategy, so it would be great to bring a proposal or recommendation to review the directives to include socioeconomic discrimination as a protective background, but all the way around to work with the strategies on LGBTI, on gender, on races, on Roma, on disability, to ask them to include socioeconomic rights or social rights in their framework. Another solution would also be to come back to the understanding or the practice of affirmative actions, positive actions, to create quota in different scenarios for people with living experience, regardless if they have this, regardless the recruitment process or the evaluation process, because the way they are perceived by recruiters could be also something that is detrimental for people living with living experience. I'm just going to give you an example. I live in a country where even to do an exam for the diplomacy, there is a quota for people with living experience of poverty. So there are ways to do that. And another way, also inspired by the anti-discrimination framework, to create the decades, there are decades of raising awareness on a topic. We have had in the past the decade of Roma, So to bring awareness on Roma barriers, inequalities, discrimination, social exclusion. During 10 years, the UN provided a framework to campaign around anti-gypsyism, so could be a way. We had the same thing for the people of African descent and the decade of people of African descent. For a whole 10 years, there were many campaigns worldwide to raise awareness on racial discrimination. We could also call for international decade to talk about aporophobia or socioeconomic discrimination or class discrimination. Again, making sure that with campaigns, we can offer a legal framework and a political narrative, plus a policy solution to the questions they're discussing today. I think I'm going to stop here. Many thanks. I'm open to discussions afterwards.
Sí, no por nada, nos está interesando mucho, pero
Yes, we are. Yes, we are speaking a lot, so I think we have to stop here. Thank you.
gracias.
Thank you very much.
Sí, Juliana. Pues muchas gracias, Juliana.
Well, thank you very much, Juliana. I don't know if you want to synthesize a little bit or you want to connect later on. I was just asking you for a last summary, or a small summary. Not especially in the implementation of the public policies, but just a summary. Very briefly, please.
Yeah, no, just to complement, because I forgot also to mention, I think one of the way further is also the connection with equality bodies. Equality bodies, they had, as from this year, they have more mandates to work on socioeconomic discrimination. So would be great to also speak with them and talk to them, create a strategy with them on how this could be a topic of greater awareness and more knowledge sharing across Europe. But I stop here and I wait for your questions later on. Many thanks and good luck.
Muchísimas gracias.
Un abrazo muy fuerte desde Murcia.
Thank you very much. And a big hug from Murcia. Thank you. We are going to, I'm really sorry to stop here interventions and making them short, but we really are short of time. So we need to listen to everybody, all the participants, and some of them have to catch a train. Okay, now I'll give floor to Paula Cruz, and regarding this coordinated and whole strategy, Paula is a coordinator in Portugal and a member of the EAPN in Europe. Good afternoon, welcome. Okay, so I pray just be brief and give us just a summary regarding this topic from your point of view in the EAPM in this international context, and with more and more hate speech and problems in the social media, and what is the role of the social policies in Europe and role of the organizations and the international institutions.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. After my previous conferences, I don't know if I have too much to contribute, but I have some things that I want to share with you. Also take in consideration our concern about aporophobia and the work that we do also at national level in Portugal. I must admit that EAPN Portugal is being very concerned with this topic of discrimination. Of course, we are doing a lot of work on this, about to try to find ways to fight discrimination against various groups in our society that live in vulnerable situations. And last year we have promoted this seminar about aporophobia. We have invited our colleagues in EAPN Galicia to be with us, because in fact it's a new concept and a strong concept that we wanted to bring to Portugal and promote debate around it. And we wanted to do this because we are noticed in these last years this kind of setback in the way people perceive poverty, and the way people look to people that live in poverty and social exclusion. So bring this topic about this discrimination against people living in poverty was also a way to demonstrate that this has a strong impact in poverty. People are being, this causes is a factor of increasing poverty. So we are debating, we are dealing with these different narratives in social media, even in seminars among professionals, different kind of professionals, about these ideas that people are stealing jobs, people are depending on subsidies, people are lazy, not wanting to do anything, they are spending the day on the cafe, and this has a strong impact in policies, in social policies, of course. This creates barriers to inclusion, and it creates something that sometimes people don't speak a lot, that it weakens people that are living in poverty and social exclusion. I have this small sentence of a member of our National Council of Citizens, Cidalia, and I'm going to quote her, and she says that we internalize this climate of fear which conditions us, which inhibits our creativity and ambition. It's a fear as underestimation of our abilities. So aporophobia, discrimination against people living in poverty, has a strong impact in terms of emotions, in terms of how people feel in living in these situations. And this has, we are very concerned of the impact that this in this moment can have in social policies. And one of the impacts was mentioned already by Juliana, because one of the things that we are noticed is that people don't speak anymore, or is not strong the narrative that poverty has systemic causes. The problem is not in the person. The problem is in the system. And if we don't change this narrative that there is a set of structural causes that is increasing and is promoting poverty, it's very difficult to change anything in this moment. We need to have this narrative, of course, in eradicating poverty, but this must be interiorized in the way we think policies and in the way we are implementing social policies. And also, one of the things that we see is that having this narrative that people are living, are blame, and they are living in poverty because they don't do more for not being out of poverty, and these are having an impact in the social measures. For example, they are being more restrictive in terms of access. And this is a problem because people are already lost in bureaucratic process when they want to access their rights, different rights. And it's interesting that in 2023, we promoted this also with the EAPN Europe, this People's Summit. And there was a participant of Spain that was there, and she said that bureaucracy in accessing social support services is killing everyone. This is a concern. Sometimes it seems to me that the goal of services is to make people give up and be one less. And we are notice this a lot. For example, measures like minimum income in Portugal are more and more restrictive. And this is a factor of people not having access to this measure. So, in a way, when we look, we have this concern, of course, with the impact of discrimination, aporophobia in the future of social policies. But of course, we also need to look to opportunities because, in fact, we are dealing with all these crises, is the pandemic, the impact of inflation, etc. And we see that we need to be more strong, in fact, in terms of defending and promoting social rights. We need to have more strong social policies. And we look to the European strategy to fight poverty as an opportunity, of course. La introducción no funciona, no sé.
Sí funciona, la escuchamos perfectamente.
And we see this an opportunity. We hope that this can also be an opportunity to improve national strategies to fight poverty, local strategies to fight poverty, in order to also to combat discrimination of people living in poverty. And one of the things that we also need to do is, in a way, to empower people. Social policies need to empower people, to give them voice, to give them space, also to participate in the monitoring of the policies and in the decision process of all those policies. And now one of the things that we also think that is really important, and we are doing a lot of this also in Portugal, is to work in schools, to work in educational programs. We see that it's very important to work with students and also with teachers, because we see that is increasing discrimination in this kind of groups, and it's important to try to create this culture of empathy, create this culture of solidarity in the base, even in the young people. And so I think we are dealing this dual, in a way we are concerned, and in the other way we are expecting that this new European strategy can do something different at this level. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Paula.
Many thanks, Paula. Many thanks for your participation. A big hug from Murcia. If you want to continue online, that'd be great. Now we're gonna give the floor to a member of the Euro Parliament, Maravillas Abadía. She is from Murcia. It is a pleasure to have you here to hear how the European policy is carried out at European level. Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation to the EAPN and to the University of Murcia. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this first symposium that takes place in my city, in Murcia, and also in the university where I studied. I regret not being present there, but I wanted really to contribute online. Yes, and can you tell us what is the policy at the level of the European Parliament? Yes, because Europe is also what happens in the university, in the neighborhoods, but we would like to know what is happening at the European level. So, what are the strategic frameworks that have been implemented to face the discriminatory behaviors, hate crimes, and fight against aporophobia? I would like to ask you, please, to synthesize as much as possible your speech, yes, as the rest of the participants did, please. Yes, thank you for the question. In Europe, the fight against discrimination and hate speech, including aporophobia, is not just a principle; it's also a pillar of those values. United in diversity is the European motto, and from the Parliament we work so that the inclusion policies and policies of the protection of the vulnerable people can become tangible in society. And from my work in the employment sector, I make sure that this is implemented in each resolution. Poverty is at the root of many acts of aporophobia in Europe. It is not an isolated problem, it's a structural problem that needs structural and cross-sectional solutions. Now, this is not just about giving social benefits. We need a network and we need a pathway towards autonomy and also to create employment. I think that's the best inclusion policy. When I was part of the coordination of political policies for 2025, I said that it was very important to include eradication of poverty amongst children, young people, disabled and older people in the European Union. Let us remember that 1 out of 5 adults and 1 out of 4 children in Europe are still at risk of poverty and social exclusion. We underscored that investing in education is not expense, but an investment. We insist on the importance of guaranteeing access to housing and quality social services. And we ask the Commission to develop, as soon as possible, a European strategy to fight poverty. And this is what we're working on. And this is relatively easy, actually. In that report, we remarked that we needed national and European funds so that the initiatives had a tangible impact. This report was backed by strong support, and this sends a message that the fight against poverty must translate into concrete actions. In this sense, social economy plays a central role. So foundations, NGOs, and also insertion companies create employment and open opportunities for the people that need it most. Last week, in the first European Congress on Social Economy, also hosted in Murcia, we underscore the importance of the third sector in their activity, which is basic for the sustainable integration of all people. These are live examples of how to translate solidarity into real impacts. Europe is also committed has the Social European Fund or the Fund for the Vulnerable People, which are essential to support these initiatives. And these financial instruments fund inclusion programs, also offer training and capacitation, and guarantee that the social organizations carry out their activities. Now, so this is a total network to lift people up. Now, we need to be vigilant so that these subsidies have a direct impact in the people that need it most. And then, of course, we also need the legal tools and coherent policies to denounce and report aporophobia in compliance of the European laws against discrimination. Because the society is measured by how it treats its most vulnerable citizens, and it must recognize poverty not only as an economic problem, but as a challenge that affects equality, social cohesion, and most importantly, the dignity of all people. So the future strategy that will come from Europe should incorporate concrete plans, enough funds, and measurable goals. Guarantee access to employment, housing, and it should also include mechanisms of reporting and condemnation of aggressions, all within the framework of rights of human rights of people. And beyond protecting, of course, we want to create opportunities. And in this sense, the third sector must be a key part of this strategy, because they are demonstrating that you can be competitive and inclusive at the same time, effective but also transformative for the most vulnerable citizens, and thus make the equality of opportunities become a reality. And now let me finish with a personal conviction. Fighting aporophobia is not just a question of values, it's also a question of what kind of Europe we want to build. Is it the Europe that measures its strength in economy or international impact or influence, or also respect, inclusion, and equality for all citizens? Because a Europe that leaves no one behind is a stronger Europe. Thank you very much. Maravillas. For your participation, your words are beautiful, and thank you for informing how things are going on in Europe. Now let's give the floor to José Javier López. He's the director of EAPN in Spain. I ask him to take a seat to close this panel, which is the last one. Thank you, Javier. Perhaps yours is the most difficult role, and because of the time constraint, perhaps just to give a summary and also to speak about the role of the third sector when promoting strategies. The rest of panelists have mentioned some of the strategies. So what is the role as a representative of EAPN in Spain? Well, I'm going to try to be very brief, because most of the things have already been said during this panel and the last 2 days. So there is something, before answering your question, there's something that I would like to strengthen. The question of dignity. Dignity is in the first article, both of the Universal Charter of Human Rights, but also the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. And that's not a coincidence. It's just that the dignity of all people and freedom and equality in rights means that dignity is the source of the rest of rights and principles. That's why dignity towards a person is an attack to the rights that this person has. And in this sense, aporophobia attacks those rights. And this is, we're talking here about inequality, we're talking about the direct attack because of the fact of being in a situation of poverty. And what happens is that if we don't defend the rights of the people, we will go towards, a charter like the medieval charter of privileges, so that depending on what kind of poverty you have, the real poor and other kinds of poor, we will reach, something closer to, as I said, to a medieval perspective on as we said, there is a structural poverty, something which has to do with social, economic, and political responsibility. We also talked about meritocracy. This is based on a success model. It's based on social rise that has to do with economics aspects only, and which doesn't include other aspects of our humanity, and have to do with the, everyone's life plan. Sometimes, so the most important thing also to remember all the problem of the stereotypes. This is something that has been talked about. Also intersectionality. But allow me now, in terms of specific, to say something. There are some specific changes. In EAPN, we talked about the concept of aporophobia. Depending on the countries, it is defined as one thing or the other. And we need to remember something. What we don't name, it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, we don't understand it and we cannot fight it. That's why it's very important to reach a consensus on the definition of aporophobia. What does it mean? What does it entail? And in this sense, we will be able to fight against it. And then the legal recognition. The socioeconomic recognition of vulnerability, I think that's very important. This is recognized in the European framework, also in the national framework, and I will divide this in two parts. There's one part which is the binding legal framework. It has already been mentioned. And here we have, through Article 83, that establishes the aggravating circumstances in the different levels of crimes in Europe. We could include there aporophobia as an aggravating circumstance. This is something that's been done in Spain, and something that Juliana also mentioned regarding the Directive of Equality of Treatment. We could perhaps include aporophobia there, and this is a debate that is being carried out.
And also, just in the long term, I'd like to say something that happened when we started working with experts and with our participation in Europe. Some of them, they said, looking at us, you have a long way ahead in the institutions. So this would be an important part. So in the long term, we also spoke of the framework in Europe, in the different countries, which would be linked with all the measures we spoke about. Regarding the legal framework and comprehensive strategies against poverty, it would be a mistake not to include this strategy, all these questions, and we should make it visible. The concept of aporophobia, so that it is present in the European Union. We have a European Member of Parliament, and we have all the key elements. And regarding criminalization of poverty, changing narratives, and the human rights focus. And also we've talked about administrative aporophobia in the institutions. Many persons are suffering this administrative violence or harassment, and the functioning of the institutions and how they should protect the rights of persons. So it's very necessary to work there. And we were speaking about previously about how people felt when they go to these spaces in the public sphere, to the institutions. So they should be specially protected with accompaniments and in the precise and available spaces. And just to finish, last but not least, well, I have several notes, but I'll just mention the importance of these persons suffering the situation of aporophobia to define the concept, also the design of the strategies, and persons suffering from this situation are essential also in establishing all those spaces necessary to the protection of their rights. In this sense, this is a way to make them be subjects, so persons and not objects. Thank you very much for your attendance. And well, it is difficult to finish a panel debate, a panel discussion, and you were last. And I would like to thank Ana Rincón and Carlos Pigarra, making it possible for us to understand the symposium without any language barriers. As Olivier said, sometimes even the accent can be a stereotype. So thank to them for their work, and thank to all of you. And we are going to close this symposium. So thank you very much. Thank you also to the online participants.